Hello and welcome back to Getting Started with Azure App Service Highlights. My name is Chris Howd. I'm here with Jeff Morgan.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about some advanced deployment scenarios with a focus on continuous deployment. So Jeff, you want to get us started?
Yeah, so we'll start with what are we talking about when we talk about continuous deployment or continuous integration. What we're talking about here is the cycle of building your code, checking in your code, running your tests. If the tests pass, we want to go ahead and automatically deploy that to a testing site. If that looks good, we want to deploy that to production and then repeat that process over and over. It makes it so that you can get your code out to your users faster, and it makes it so you can address issues really quickly.
Okay, so if I have, I'm working on my next version of my website, and I want to maybe deploy it to a staging site, and then if everything's working, I can kind of flip them?
Exactly. Yeah, it makes it so that if you set this up ahead of time, that you can push out code updates really quickly. If you've got issues, you can address them. If you've got a bug, you don't have to waste time in trying to set up a deployment and stuff like that. You've got the system ready to go. All you need to do is check in your code and you're good to go.
So that's really great, right?
Yep.
No downtime, all that kind of great stuff that you would hope to have.
Exactly. So let's look at a couple of different ways we can do this. So the first way is we can use GitHub. So if you use GitHub to check in your code, hooking it up to an Azure web app is really easy. All you got to do is point it to your GitHub repo, set up your credentials, and then you're good to go. If you have a .NET or a Node project that maybe needs some package rehydration, you need to bring down those Node modules, or you need to bring in those NuGet packages, it'll go ahead and do that for you. It'll build your code, it'll compile it, and it'll publish it. It makes it really cool to have a continuous integration cycle using the tools you already use.
Okay, that sounds really good. And Jeff, you have another one of your famous pre-recorded demos that you're going to show us here?
Famous already? All right, let's take a look. Setting up deployment from GitHub to your Azure web app is quick and easy, and it only takes a couple of clicks. To get started, we'll go ahead and go to Deployment Options. And when this page loads up, we'll be able to specify that we want to go from an existing GitHub repo. I'll flip over to GitHub here, and you can see I've set up already a repo, and I've already put in code here. So we're going to connect to this from Azure. I'll go ahead and choose my source and specify that I want to go to GitHub. I'll choose my source as GitHub, and then you can come here to authorization, and this is where you'll put your credentials in. I've already authenticated, so it already reads my GitHub name. I'll go ahead and choose project, and then I'll come here to continuous integration. I want to choose the master branch, and you can also configure some performance tests, but to keep this simple, we'll skip that for now. Go ahead and click OK. You'll see here it's set up the deployment source from GitHub. If I click away from deployment options and then come back to it, you'll find that it is currently doing a fetch from GitHub. It's pending the deployment, and once this deployment is complete, we'll be able to view our site. And through the magic of video editing, a few minutes becomes a few seconds, and our site has deployed. If I go back here over to Overview and then click on our site, we should be able to see the ASP.NET sample application has deployed successfully. And there you go. So like you saw, it's like 3 clicks. You can set up a GitHub.
That was famous.
Yes, it was famously quick.
I bet we'll see that all over the web now.
Oh, I hope not. So we can set up a GitHub link with only a couple of clicks. You set it up, it's good to go, and it runs every time you check in your code. But we can do the same thing with Visual Studio Team Services. And this gives us a little bit more ability than we had with GitHub. So say you've got a lot of complicated transforms. Maybe you've got to set up environmental variables. You've got config variables you need to set up. You can go ahead and do that all with Visual Studio Team Services, in addition to everything you can do with GitHub, but you can set up all of these tasks to run beforehand and really customize your build process if it's more than just a compile, build, deploy.
So is it more difficult? You're saying there's a lot more that you can do. Is it a big, kind of hard to work with?
So Visual Studio Team Services will automatically set up the pipeline for you, and then you can customize it from there. It is very extensible. You can go really in depth. You can have gates and bridges of what people can view certain code and what people can view certain deployments, or you can go ahead and make it really simple. It's really up to you. But let's go ahead and take a look.
That sounds great.
Sounds great. Few deployment processes are as simple as copying files. So usually you'll have build scripts that run that maybe change configuration variables or set environment parameters. We can do this as well in Visual Studio or in Azure App Services, I should say. So let's go ahead and dive into the new feature, continuous delivery. Here I can go ahead and set up these kinds of tasks. I can set for an auto deployment every time I check in code, maybe run some scripts, build it, test it, and deploy all the way out to Azure. So let's get started. I hit configure here. I'll go ahead and choose a repository. This time I'll choose Visual Studio Team Services. I'll go ahead and click my project, and then I'm going to click the continuous integration repo, which is the one that I'm working with here. I'll go ahead and make sure that the master branch is the one that I want to build. I'll hit OK. And then here in build, I'm going to go ahead and set this to be an ASP.NET Core application. If I had tests, I could go ahead and set them up here as well, but we'll keep it simple and skip that. And then for deployment, I can use a really cool feature of Azure Web Apps, and this is called deployment slots. This allows me to deploy to perhaps a staging site or a QA site so that I can test and look at the environment if I want to, and then hot swap it into production, meaning that production sees no downtime. The IP addresses are just swapped behind the scenes so that there are no downtime at all when you move a deployment from a deployment slot into your production slot. So we'll go ahead and use this feature. I'll go ahead and hit yes. I'm going to go ahead and create a new deployment slot, call it staging, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And we'll finish this. And then after a few minutes, this will have finished building out the build process, and we'll be able to take a look at what it built. After a couple of minutes, we can see that it's gone ahead and it's built out our deployment process, and it's also created that new deployment slot. It has also triggered a new build, pulling the latest code and running it through the pipeline. Let's take a look at what it built. So I'll click here on build definition, and this will bring me inside of Visual Studio Team Services. Here I can see it's already got a build in progress. If I click on the build number, it brings me to a live running console of the build process. You can see here it's currently restoring the NuGet packages. And this way I can see live if my deployment is going well or if there are errors. All of these logs are written out as well into text files so that you can come back afterwards and see if your build was successful or not and any output that it may have given you. The build itself, if I go back here a page, we can take a look at the build definition. I'll come here and I'll click the edit button, and we'll see the pipeline that Visual Studio Team Services built out for us. So you can see here I've got 4 different tasks in here. I have a restore for the NuGet packages. It builds the project. It runs any tests that I might have, and it also publishes the artifacts, the end code that I'm going to, in the end, upload to Azure Web Apps. So I can actually come in here if I wanted to. I could add another task in here, and you can see there's a whole collection of all sorts of different tasks I can run. Anything that I can run on the command line. If I need to run NPM or node modules or anything like that, I can run everything through here. There's a lot of pre-made ones, but you can also build your own as well. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. Basically, if you can write it in PowerShell, you can go ahead and there's probably a task already for it to help you with your build process. Just like there's build process tasks, there's also deployment process tasks. So I'll jump over to releases. You can see here it's made a new release definition. I'll click on that and I'll go ahead and click edit. And just like the tasks over there, there's tasks for deployment. If I click on the production environment that it has made for us, you can see that it has 2 different tasks for a production deployment. It goes and it deploys to a particular slot, in this case our staging slot, and then after the staging slot deployment is successful, and if only it is successful, it'll then go ahead and do a slot swap from my staging site over to my production site. There's a lot of other features here you can light up in Visual Studio Team Services. If you want, you can have gates on your deployment slot such that code doesn't leave your staging slot until somebody has reviewed it, a human person, and approved it, and then only it will go into production, or you can automate it through a whole bunch of different environments. It's completely up to you and how you want to build it. If I go back here to the continuous delivery in the Azure portal, and I wait here for a little bit, you'll see in a minute that the build was successful and the swap into production has completed. A quick fast forward in time, and you can see here that the slot has been swapped with production and our code is in our final site. If I come over here into the overview tab, I can come back to my URL and I should see the application here. There we go.
All right, Jeff, another great demo. Thank you very much for doing that. That was pretty interesting stuff, and I can kind of see the difference between that Git deployment scenario and the VSTS scenario. So if I'm used to using Git for my deployments, and I switch and I want some of those bells and whistles that we get with VSTS, is that difficult for me to like make that adjustment? Or
yeah, so if you've used GitHub in the past and you're looking to move over to VSTS, VSTS under the hood will run Git for you. So you can go ahead and check in your code using the same tools and IDEs that you may use already. And then this just adds another layer of bells and whistles on top that allow you to do build processes and releases, wikis and stuff like that on top of it.
Okay, cool. All right, good. Good to hear. So now that kind of wraps up this section on advanced deployment scenarios and continuous deployment. Let's talk just a little bit about what's in the edX course that's not here, right? Because we've shown some of these continuous deployment, but we have a little bit more in the edX course.
Yeah, so in the edX course, we go also into deployment templates in Azure, how you can go ahead and group together, say, a website and an app analytics into a common package that you can redeploy over and over again, or maybe shut down when it's not in use and then redeploy when you're ready to use them again. So we cover some of those more advanced deployment topics there.
Okay, great. And that's like that's a whole lab that we didn't really talk about here, other than just now saying blah blah blah. But so it's some good stuff in the edX course. So a good reason maybe to go and take a peek, at least maybe try that lab.
Definitely worth trying to try the more advanced deployment scenarios inside of Azure as well, outside of GitHub and VSTS.
Yeah. And of course, you get that whole hands-on, help you through each of these things. If you try these labs, you watch this, you try some of this stuff, and you're like, I'm kind of getting stuck. edX course
will help you every step of the way.
It's kind of nice. All right, so thank you very much for joining us again on this continuous deployment section of this course, and we'll see you back for the next section.
Thanks.